Sir, step back! She'll bite! The security guard's voice cracked like a whip through the marble lobby of Solvita Corp headquarters in San Jose. Lucas Bennett froze mid-mop, his hand tightening around the handle like it was a shield. At the center of the chaos, a small girl with platinum blonde hair sat curled on the floor, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, rocking back and forth beside the towering corporate sculpture. Her face was blank, but her eyes darted like birds trapped in a cage. Around her stood 5 adults in tailored suits, helpless. One woman whispered urgently into her phone, "She's having another episode. Where's her nanny?" The girl's soft humming was nearly swallowed by the building's icy silence. Lucas took a slow, cautious step forward. "May I?" The guard blocked him with an arm. "That's Dr. Carter's daughter," he hissed. "Don't get involved. Last guy who tried got fired on the spot." But Lucas wasn't listening. He wasn't looking at the suits or the blinking red security camera overhead. He was watching her, watching the way her fingers tapped the tile in a rhythm only she seemed to hear. "I'm not going to talk to her," Lucas said gently. "I'm just going to sit." And he did, right there on the cold marble floor, 5 feet away, still in his janitor's uniform and scuffed boots. He reached into his supply cart and pulled out a cheap bottle of dish soap. Without a word, he dipped his fingers into the mop water and began to blow bubbles. 1, 2, 3. The girl stilled, her rocking slowed, her humming softened. She watched, transfixed, as iridescent bubbles floated through the air, some popping, others drifting lazily upward like secrets too tender to land. Lucas didn't look at her. He didn't ask anything. He just kept blowing bubbles. The mezzanine level of Solvita Corp was silent. The sharp rhythm of high heels echoed off the marble, cold and precise, just like the woman wearing them. Dr. Camille Carter, CEO of one of the top biotech corporations in the U.S., stood silently behind the glass railing, eyes fixed on the scene below. She didn't blink, didn't frown, but the hand she had folded tightly over her chest now hung loose at her sides. The little girl downstairs, Ava, her daughter, or more accurately, the child that had reduced dozens of top-tier specialists to helpless shrugs, was now following a bubble with her eyes. Not a psychologist, not a therapist, not a trained expert, but a janitor sitting cross-legged on the floor. Ava had stopped humming, stopped rocking, and just watched the bubbles rise like they were the most magical things in the world. Camille felt something crack open inside her chest. A tremor, a flicker, a sensation she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. The elevator opened with a cold chime. Lucas stood up as Camille entered the lobby. He didn't look back at Eva. He only gave a quiet nod. Camille approached, the air of someone used to command. "Mr. Bennett." "Ma'am?" She glanced at her daughter, now lying calmly on her side, eyes still following a drifting bubble. "I'd like to speak with you." "Upstairs." Lucas hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Camille's office sat on the top floor. Walls of glass overlooking downtown San Jose, polished steel furniture gleaming under the California sun. Everything in the room radiated control. "Close the door," she said. Lucas obeyed. Camille didn't sit immediately. She walked to the window, her back to him. "Who taught you that?" "I'm sorry?" "The bubbles. That, whatever that was." Lucas answered, his voice steady and calm. "My daughter, Becca. She has mild sensory processing disorder. I used to teach special education for 11 years. Camille turned slightly, raising a brow. "Used to?" Lucas inhaled, eyes drifting to a far corner of the room. After my wife passed away, I couldn't stay in the classroom. Every child became a reflection of what I'd lost. I took this job for the quiet. No one expects too much from a janitor. Camille said nothing for a long moment. Then, almost like the words surprised her too, my daughter doesn't engage. Not with me, not with doctors, not with anyone. And you blew bubbles, and she calmed down. Lucas didn't respond. He didn't need to. Camille gave a subtle nod, barely perceptible, but real. I want you to work with her. Once a week, twice if you're available. Lucas blinked. I'm a janitor, Dr. Carter. I can change that. I don't need charity. It's not charity. Camille stepped closer. It's a job offer. Lucas was silent, then said, What Eva needs isn't a job. Something flickered in Camille's expression. Not offense, guilt. A feeling she had buried so deeply that it only took one sentence to rupture. She has access to the best care money can buy, Camille snapped. Lucas replied gently, Maybe that's the problem. The room fell into a strange silence. Not hostile, but hollow, like someone had finally asked a question long avoided. Then Lucas said, If I say yes, it's under one condition. Camille crossed her arms. Which is? I don't work for you. I work with Ava. And when I'm with her, no observers, no cameras, and absolutely no clipboard psychologists lurking in the corner. Camille studied him, long enough for him to wonder if he'd just cost himself everything. Then, slowly, she nodded. My assistant will contact you. Lucas nodded once. Then we'll see if she's ready. He turned to the door. Wait, Camille called after him. The bubbles. What color were they? Lucas glanced back with a faint smile. Blue. Always start with blue. It calms the chaos. The door closed with a soft click, but the echo of his words lingered, like a whispered prayer in a cathedral no one had entered in years. 2 days later, at exactly 5 p.m., the doorbell of the Skyview penthouse chimed. It wasn't a butler or security staff who answered. It was Camille herself. She was dressed unusually casual, a light blue button-down with sleeves rolled up to her elbows, barefoot. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, but her eyes held something uncertain. Standing at the door was Lucas, same simple attire as before, but this time a young girl stood beside him, her small hand in his. This is Becca, Lucas said. My daughter. She knows the rules. No pushing, no pressure. And most of all, she listens. Camille looked at Becca, about 8 years old, with a side ponytail and a little tote bag poking open with colored pencils. Is she the quiet one? Camille asked. Becca nodded with a soft smile. I'll be quiet, if she needs me to be. Camille didn't answer, but the corners of her mouth lifted, the closest thing to a smile in a long while. This way. The penthouse was vast, blinding white, pristine to a fault. Everything gleamed. The leather sofas had no creases. The glass sparkled like it had never known fingerprints. Lucas scanned the space. No toys, no color, no life, only control, scrubbed clean. Where is she? He asked. Camille gestured down the hall. Last room on the left. Lucas bent down beside Becca. You okay to draw for a bit? Becca nodded, pulling out a roll of paper and a box of crayons. She has blonde hair, right? That's right. Big eyes, too. Then I'll make her look like a fairy tale. Becca plopped onto the floor and unrolled her paper, starting to draw without looking around, without asking for anything. Camille watched the quiet exchange, something twisting inside her. She didn't need permission, didn't ask for approval or performance. She just existed. Lucas walked slowly into Eva's room. It was a palace, white curtains, feather pillows, rows of untouched toys lined up like a showroom, but none of it looked used. None of it looked loved. Ava sat curled in the corner, her head resting against the glass, watching the city's sunset. She didn't look up, didn't flinch. Lucas said nothing. He sat down about 10 feet away and pulled out a small sketch pad from his jacket. A curve, a circle. 5 stars. Eva didn't turn. After 3 minutes, Lucas held up the drawing slightly, then placed it beside him. He waited. No words. And then, without a sound, Eva stood. She walked toward him, small, bird-like steps, picked up the paper, and sat right next to him. Camille, watching from the cracked door, covered her mouth with her hand. She hadn't seen Eva willingly sit beside anyone in nearly a year. Lucas didn't acknowledge the child. He simply began to sketch another image, a floating bubble above a little girl's head. Eva reached out, for the first time in months, and picked up a crayon. No one spoke. No one asked her to. And somehow, that silence was sacred. 15 minutes later, Lucas emerged from the room. Camille stood waiting, arms crossed, but her face had softened. "She drew with you," she said, as if needing to hear it out loud. "She started the conversation," Lucas replied. Camille frowned, but she didn't say anything. Lucas nodded gently. Talking and connecting aren't always the same. Camille didn't argue. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked, surprising even herself. "Water's fine." She poured it herself, not through a machine, not by staff. Just her, a glass, and a hand that trembled slightly. "I don't know how to reach her," she admitted, sliding the glass across the counter. Lucas didn't take it yet. "Have you tried letting her reach you?" Camille blinked. "I've done everything a mother can do. Therapy, nutrition, sleep plans, speech specialists. I flew in a behavioral therapist from Sweden. 30,000 a week." Lucas finally took the glass and sipped. "Sounds like you've hired a lot of people to talk to her," he said gently. "But has anyone truly listened?" Her voice tightened. "I listen. I rearranged my whole life for her." Lucas met her eyes. "But did you rearrange your heart?" The silence that followed wasn't sharp. It was hollow, like a space someone had tried too hard to fill, with the wrong things. That day, Lucas brought nothing but a sketch pad and a worn-out box of pencils. No toys, no charts, no clinical tools, just time and silence. Eva was already in her room, sitting in her usual spot by the glass window overlooking the city. Her head tilted slightly, her fingers clutching a frayed blue string. She didn't look up when Lucas entered. He didn't say her name, didn't try to draw attention, didn't smile. He simply stepped in, sat down a few feet away, and quietly opened his sketch pad. A curved line, a spiral, a bubble. Each stroke breathed patience. Slow, calm, unintrusive. Eva glanced sideways, didn't turn her head, but one hand stilled, no longer twirling the string. Lucas didn't react. He just kept sketching. A simple room appeared on the page, a small girl sitting by a window, looking out at a sky filled with floating orbs, bubbles. He didn't offer her the drawing. He just placed it gently on the floor between them and began a new one. Then, after about 5 minutes, Eva stood up, step by step. Cautious, delicate, like a kitten afraid of waking something asleep. She picked up the drawing, said nothing, and returned to sit beside Lucas. Not close, but close enough to see the lines on the paper. Lucas continued drawing. Another bubble, but this time, inside it, a lollipop. A little sweetness held in a fragile shell. Eva tilted her head. Her tiny fingers slid toward the box of colored pencils. She picked out blue. And then, like a silent ritual, Eva began to color a blank corner of the page. No one said a word. No one asked her to. And in that moment, silence itself felt like a sacred bond. Outside in the living room, Becca was still drawing. Camille stepped out, surprised to see the girl not running around, not talking, just quietly coloring a scene. Two girls sitting under a tree. Camille sat across from her. "What are you drawing?" Becca looked up. "Me, and a new friend." "A friend?" Becca nodded. "I don't know if she wants to be friends yet, so I drew her sitting a little far away." Camille stayed silent. "I'll wait," Becca said simply. "When she's ready, she'll move closer." The words, gentle and childlike, struck something deep inside Camille. When she's ready, not when I'm ready. Back in Eva's room, the air remained as still as dawn. Lucas had shifted from pencil to watercolor. He dipped his brush into a small jar and dabbed soft blue dots in the corner of the page, like sky. Eva watched every movement. Her hand twitched, then reached for a second brush nearby. Lucas didn't speak. He simply tilted the jar of water toward her. An invitation without words. Eva dipped her brush, gently added a blue stroke alongside his. No instructions, no praise, just two people, existing side by side, like rivers slowly converging. Camille once again stood by the cracked door. She wasn't filming, wasn't taking notes, wasn't giving orders. She was simply watching. For the first time in years, she saw Eva do something because she wanted to, not because someone told her to. Her daughter was choosing to connect. Not with words, but with color, with proximity, with trust that rose from quiet. Nearly an hour later, Lucas stood up. "Would you like to draw again tomorrow?" he asked softly, not looking at her, just letting the question float. No response. But as he stepped out of the room, Eva gently laid down her brush. On the paper, a simple drawing, a single blue bubble, and inside it, a tiny heart. "Dinner at 6. Nothing formal. I want to try something." The text from Camille came at noon. Short, no exclamation marks, no polite pleasantries. Lucas read it 3 times, then turned to Becca. "Would you like to have dinner at your new friend's house?" Becca's eyes lit up. "Will Eva be there?" "Yes." "Then definitely yes." That evening, the private elevator carried the father and daughter to the top floor of Skyview. Lucas wore one of his rare, freshly ironed white shirts. In his hand was a bouquet of wildflowers wrapped in old newspaper from the weekend farmer's market. "Always bring something alive," his late wife used to say. "When you walk into someone's world, bring a breath of kindness with you." Becca clutched a small fabric tote containing her handmade dinner menu. Dancing grapes, a smiling slice of bread, a sun made of spaghetti. Camille greeted them at the door. No heels or blazer today. Just a navy blouse and soft linen pants. Her hair still tied back, but she was barefoot. "You brought flowers?" she asked, surprised. "For the room," Lucas replied. It needed something still breathing. Camille blinked. "I think that includes us tonight." The dining room, once cold and sterile like a boardroom, had transformed. The long 10-seat table had been replaced with a small round one. The lighting was softer. A single candle flickered gently at the center. Eva was already seated. Her hands rested quietly in front of her, fingers gripping a single crayon. Blue. Becca slid into the seat beside her and whispered, "I brought you this." She carefully pulled out the illustrated menu and placed it beside Eva's plate. No explanations, no coaxing, just presence. Eva looked. The corner of her mouth lifted, ever so slightly. Camille, standing behind her, watched as though witnessing a miracle, not blinking. Dinner was simple, nothing spicy, nothing pungent, nothing steaming hot. Eva's plate matched Becca's exactly. Lucas noticed something else. No phones on the table, no staff watching from the corner, no CEO, just a mother, trying to learn how to sit still. Tonight, Camille spoke up, as if declaring it to herself, "I'm only fluent in one language." Lucas smiled. That's progress. For the first few minutes, no one spoke. Just the soft clink of silverware, the brushing of napkins, faint piano music playing from a speaker. Then Becca asked, "Eva, want to draw after dinner?" Eva didn't respond immediately, but she looked at her plate, then at Becca. Then reached out and picked up a small spoonful of mashed sweet potatoes, placed it in her mouth. Lucas froze. His entire body seemed to hold its breath. Becca smiled casually, as if it were the most normal thing. "Yay, let's eat together." Camille hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath too. She exhaled slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted her water glass. Lucas leaned toward her and whispered, "She didn't eat breakfast, did she?" Camille nodded. "Or yesterday. Now she's choosing to. Choosing this moment. This presence." Camille looked at her daughter, eyes glistening. "Why does it feel like I've missed every important moment?" Lucas didn't answer right away. He murmured, "Then let her lead." The two girls ate slowly. No one rushed them. Eva hummed a soft note under her breath, a sound barely there, like a language unsaid. Then she reached out, gently touching the back of Becca's hand. Camille gasped softly, not loudly, but enough that Eva flinched. Lucas raised a calming hand. "It's okay. It's all right." Eva looked at her mother, then at Lucas, then spoke, so softly, so clearly. "Blue." Camille dropped her fork. Lucas swallowed. "She remembers the bubbles." Eva nodded faintly. Becca whispered, "She uses colors to speak. It's how she feels safe." Camille pressed her lips together, fighting emotion. "I used to paint before I started the company. Watercolors. My studio was painted blue." Lucas looked at her. "She didn't forget. You did." 2 weeks after that dinner, the very thing Lucas had feared finally happened. That morning, Camille entered the company's boardroom with a heavy heart. On the large screen were sensational headlines plastered across various media outlets. CEO Camille Price hires janitor to treat her daughter's mental health? A specialist or a scam artist? The bubble-blowing man, a new symbol of corporate irresponsibility? Greg, the head of PR and Camille's right-hand man, stood at the front, tossing a stack of printed articles onto the table. This is all over LinkedIn, Twitter, even investor forums. The shareholders are livid. The board is questioning your leadership. Camille said nothing. She stared at the bold font on the screen. Lucas, Eva, their names swept into a media frenzy they never asked for. Greg continued, his voice sharp. "I called Lucas this morning. Told him to suspend all sessions. This isn't personal anymore. This is corporate reputation." Camille looked up. "You ordered him?" "Number one spoke on your behalf. And if you want to keep this seat, you won't reverse that decision." Meanwhile, back at home, Lucas quietly packed up some of Eva's drawings. Messy, layered strokes, chaotic reds and blacks, and in the center, a small blue circle. Fragile, but clear. Becca sat beside him, whispering, "Dad, I think she was about to tell a story. With colors. We can't leave now." Lucas gave her a soft smile, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "There are stories, honey, that adults will never understand if they only care about headlines." The doorbell rang. It was the mail carrier. A simple envelope, yet impossibly heavy. Notice of suspension of cooperation. Signed, Camille Price, CEO of Skyview Group. Lucas stood there for a long time. He wasn't angry, not even disappointed, just sad. Sad for Ava. That day, Ava sat alone in the living room, waiting for the door to open, waiting for the footsteps of the man with the gentle eyes. But no one came. Becca didn't enter like usual. No bubbles, no quiet laughter. Eva began to tremble. Her hand clenched a colored marker so hard the tip snapped. She screamed, not with sound, just a flurry of frantic behavior, throwing, hitting, hiding under the table. Camille rushed in, tried to hold her, but Ava flailed like she'd been touched by fire. "She's losing it!" a panicked nanny gasped. Camille knelt beside her daughter, eyes brimming with tears. "What do you need, sweetheart? It's Mommy. I'm right here." But Eva only cried out one word, over and over again. "Blue! Blue! Blue!" Camille froze. It wasn't a color. It was a name. It was safety. That night, Camille stood alone in her high-rise office. The city lights behind her sparkled like hollow stars. She pulled up the smart home camera footage from earlier that day. The moment Eva broke down and collapsed. Camille started to cry. She remembered every board meeting she'd prioritized, every interview she did to protect the company, every time she silenced her heart to maintain control. "I fought for the company, but not hard enough for my child." She picked up her phone, searched for Lucas's number. Her finger hovered over the call button. This time, she didn't let reason get in the way. Ring. Ring. "Lucas, it's me, Camille. I was wrong." Her voice cracked. "Not about the media, not about the reputation, but about Eva. I can't lose her, and I can't help her without you." A long pause. Then Lucas replied simply, "Then let her lead." The next morning, Lucas had just dropped Becca off at school and was brewing a quiet cup of coffee in his small kitchen when he heard a knock. Not the doorbell, just a few gentle, hesitant taps, as if the person outside wasn't entirely sure they were welcome. He opened the door. Camille was standing there. Not CEO Camille, not the one with tailored dresses, dark sunglasses, and a driver waiting below. Just a mother, wrapped in a wrinkled coat, hair tied hastily, eyes red-rimmed from tears she hadn't bothered to conceal. Lucas said nothing. Camille clutched the strap of her purse a little tighter and spoke. "For the first time in my life, I'm showing up with no title. Not as a CEO, not as the head of a board, just as the mother of a little girl named Ava. And I don't know what to do if she loses the only connection she just barely found." Lucas looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. No judgment, no lecture, just understanding. The penthouse. For the first time, Camille entered without a line of assistants trailing behind her. Ava sat curled up in the corner, hugging her knees, her eyes distant and glassy. But the moment Lucas stepped in, something shifted, not loudly, but like the subtle rustling of leaves at the edge of a new season. Lucas didn't speak. He simply sat down, reached into his bag, and pulled out a small stack of blank paper and a box of colored pencils. He placed them gently on the floor and waited. Camille sat nearby, a respectful distance away. She didn't call out to her daughter or reach for her. She just watched her, as though really seeing her for the first time. Ava hesitated. Then, slowly, almost cautiously, she crawled toward the paper. She began to draw. A house, a window, a grown-up in a blue shirt, a little girl with a ponytail. It was Lucas and Becca, two people whose names Ava had never spoken aloud, yet now appeared in color. Then she paused, staring at the page. She picked up a crayon again, but didn't add anything. Lucas remained silent. Camille gently approached, kneeling beside her daughter. Ava turned toward her, just a glance, hesitant but searching, as if to ask, "Are you still here?" Camille reached out and placed her hand lightly on the blank space of the drawing, where a third person should have been. "You don't have to finish it," she whispered, "but I'll stay, as long as it takes." Ava blinked. Then, with a sudden decision, she grabbed the blue crayon again and traced a soft line into that empty space. Not a full figure, not a face, just a streak of color. But it was enough. The picture no longer felt incomplete. Camille covered her mouth, fighting back a sob. That night, Camille and Lucas sat on the rooftop terrace, each with a mug of tea in their hands. The city stretched out beneath them in a quiet hum of headlights and wind. No press, no board meetings, no performance, just a mother and a man who listened. "You know," Camille murmured, "I always thought I had to be perfect to deserve being her mother." Lucas gave a small smile. "Perfection never helped anyone listen better." She turned to him, eyes shimmering. "They can take my title, shred my reputation, but I won't let anyone take Eva away from me again. Not even if that person is me." Lucas nodded gently. "Then we start again." The next morning, when Becca returned to the penthouse with her father, Eva was already waiting by the door. In her hands was a drawing. She didn't give it to Lucas. She handed it to Camille. A new picture. 3 people. No empty space. News about Camille Langford, the CEO who once lost control of her company for prioritizing her daughter, had flooded the media. But the real storm came when a man walked through the courthouse doors, cold eyes and documents in hand. Gregory Stanford, Ava's biological father. For 3 years he hadn't called, hadn't visited once. But now, with Camille's reputation teetering, he appeared, backed by a team of lawyers, demanding custody. Camille clenched the summons in her hand. She didn't cry, but her fingers trembled as she stared at the name of the man who used to be her partner, now trying to take away the only light left in her life. The courtroom wasn't as chaotic as the tabloids suggested, but the tension in every glance made the air feel thick and heavy. Greg, in a steel-gray suit as cold as his voice, spoke first. He talked about Camille's emotional instability, about an unstable home, about a janitor with no qualifications being allowed unsupervised access to his daughter. "She doesn't speak," Greg emphasized, "which means she can't object, and Camille is exploiting that." Camille said nothing. Then it was Lucas's turn. He stepped up to the witness stand in a plain button-up shirt, holding a copy of one of Eva's drawings. "I'm not a psychologist," he began. "I'm not here to argue who makes a better parent. I'm here to speak about a little girl who says nothing, but always listens." Lucas looked directly at the judge, and at Greg. Silence isn't a void. Sometimes it's the only safe place when the world is too loud, too fast, too much. What matters is who's willing to stay in that silence without forcing her out. The judge didn't interrupt. Lucas continued. "Ava draws. That's how she communicates. Not with words, but with color. And I'd like to show the court one of her drawings." He signaled to Becca, seated in the gallery. She stepped up shyly, holding a carefully laminated picture. "This is Eva's family. Drawn by herself," Becca whispered. "She told me family is the people who make her feel blue." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Blue?" "Blue," Lucas explained, was the first word Eva said after months of silence. "It's not just a color. To her, blue means safety. It means someone calm like the sea, patient like the sky." It means a place where she isn't rushed out of the dark. A quiet hush fell over the room. The judge looked down at the drawing. A little girl in the center, a woman with a neatly tied bun on the left, Camille. On the right, a man with round glasses and a soft blue shirt, Lucas. Beside them stood a smaller girl, holding a box of crayons, Becca. All three were framed in a sky of soft blue. There was no image of Greg, no trace of anyone else. After deliberation, Camille sat outside the courtroom holding a paper coffee cup gone cold. She didn't cry, but her eyes were distant. Lucas sat beside her. He said nothing. A moment later, the judge stepped into the hallway. "Miss Langford," he said, "this court doesn't just consider resumes or reports. It considers who stays. When a child doesn't have the words to ask for help." Camille held her breath. "Custody is awarded to you." She exhaled, soft and quiet. No tears, no cheers, just her eyes glistening as she looked at Lucas, then at Becca, who stood across the hall holding Eva's hand, pointing up at a cloud drifting across the glass ceiling. Eva smiled. After the trial, the late afternoon sunlight over New York felt strangely lighter. Camille no longer had to dodge the press, nor answer questions about corporate image or her CEO title. Instead, she poured all her energy into a new project, not for reputation, but for Eva. The idea began one evening when Eva quietly handed her mother a drawing. On the page, gone were the anxious, tangled lines. Instead was a room filled with circles of blue, pale yellow, and pastel purple. In the center, 3 people sat on the floor, holding hands, gazing in the same direction. Eva wrote simply, "A safe place." Camille hugged her tightly, for the first time feeling no need for perfect words. She simply whispered, "We'll build a place like this, not just for you, but for anyone who needs to belong." A month later, a new sign hung over an old downtown building, Solvita Room. Lucas was the one who designed the space. No assessments, no standardization, just colors, silence, and freedom. The main room was flooded with natural light, with no forgotten corners. Beanbags replaced stiff chairs and tables. Walls were hand-painted with clouds, bubbles, and gentle curves, drawn by the children, Lucas, and Becca themselves. Every corner was painted a different color, not to divide by function, but so children could choose where they felt safest. The blue corner? Quiet, for those who wanted to watch from afar. The yellow corner? Warm light and plenty of paper for anyone wanting to create. The purple corner? Soft cushions and gentle music, for those who needed a virtual embrace. Becca was in charge of the bubble corner, where anyone could blow rainbow soap bubbles, a reminder that small joys can soothe even the fiercest storms inside. No one asked, "What's wrong with you?" They only asked, "What color do you like today?" If a child only drew a single curve, that was enough. If they just sat quietly, that was fine too. On opening day, Eva entered the Solvita room with her very first drawing. A family not perfect, but all smiling. Reporters were present, but this time no one focused on CEOs or past scandals. They just quietly watched as a child stood in the middle of the room, placed her paper on the board, and said, almost in a whisper, "This is a place where everyone can just be themselves." Lucas stood at the back, his eyes damp. Camille held her daughter's hand, unafraid of any camera. A mother led her autistic son forward. "How do you feel?" The boy pointed to the blue corner, then ran to hug a pillow. No words needed. Another little girl, leaving her mother's side for the first time, immediately ran over to Becca to learn how to blow bubbles. Laughter rose like the morning sun. That afternoon, after everyone had gone, Camille, Lucas, Ava, and Becca sat together by the window, watching the last rays of sunlight dance across the walls. Ava spoke, not with words, but by taking her mother's hand and placing it in a jar of ocean blue watercolor. "Will you paint with me?" Camille smiled, realizing happiness doesn't come from fixing her child, but from creating together a space where wounds are allowed to exist, and every heart has the right to be heard. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, the Solvita room was calmer than usual. Sunlight slipped through the windows, scattering soft yellow streaks across the floor, now covered with the colorful stains left by children. Becca and Eva sat together in the yellow corner, where stacks of drawing paper, crayons, watercolors, and carefully sharpened colored pencils surrounded them. Becca was busy sketching a tri-colored puppy, while Eva quietly chose her colors, arranging the boxes in neat order, her eyes intent as if she were sorting the whole world. Camille stood by the door, arms around a stack of documents, planning to check her emails while the girls drew. But when she saw Eva, she paused. Not because she was called, but because a peacefulness filled the room, the kind she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Eva gently placed a blank sheet in front of her. Then, without looking up, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Mom, come draw with me." Camille froze for a moment. For the first time in years, Eva had invited her to do something. Not a doctor's appointment, not a therapy exercise, just to draw together. Becca gently pulled a little wooden chair toward her. "Miss Camille, sit here with us." Camille glanced back at her stack of papers. Then, as if exhaling a deep breath, she set it all aside, took off her watch, and stepped toward the girls. For the first time, she sat right down on the floor, amid spilled watercolor and crumpled paper, instead of standing at a distance, watching. Eva handed her a red crayon. Becca picked yellow. Ava, of course, stayed loyal to blue. The three of them drew sweeping arcs together on the big sheet. Eva tilted her head, studying every line, then quietly added more. A stroke of purple to the left, a hint of orange to the right. "Draw more, Mom," Eva whispered, never taking her eyes off the page. Camille felt the warmth of her daughter's small hand. She didn't rush, didn't correct, didn't guide Eva's strokes. She simply picked up purple and traced a gentle curve beside Eva's line. Becca, delighted, added green, creating shimmering sun raindrops around the rainbow. Three hands, one large, two small, gradually met in the middle of the paper. Eva looked at their creation, then looked up, her eyes shining as if she was seeing for the first time how gentle the world could be. "This is my rainbow," she whispered. "The first rainbow with Mom drawing, too." Camille's eyes stung with tears, but this time her tears were of happiness. She realized, healing doesn't come from searching for solutions. It comes from the moment you're willing to sit down, listen, and draw the colors of life you've never dared to try. Together. At the end of the afternoon, the three of them taped their picture to the wall, joining dozens of other artworks. But this was the only one with every color shining brightly. Camille looked at Ava and gently asked, "What's your favorite color today?" Ava didn't answer right away. She just rested her head on her mother's shoulder and whispered, "I love them all, as long as I get to draw with you." The joy at Solvita Room didn't last long before another storm arrived. On Monday morning, just as Camille arrived at the center, Greg was already waiting in the meeting room, looking more tense than ever. On the large screen was a photo, Camille, beaming beside Lucas in the flower garden behind Solvita Room. Golden afternoon sunlight, their shadows mingling in a simple, genuine moment. But that very photo was being shared at lightning speed on social media, accompanied by endless comments, from powerful CEO to emotional mother. A romance between the boss and the janitor? Solvita room. A place for healing? Or just a PR performance? Greg clutched his iPad, displaying a barrage of urgent emails from investors. You realize this impacts our investment fund, the project's reputation, and your credibility, right? They're demanding an emergency meeting. They want an explanation from you, Camille. Camille took a deep breath, her eyes calm. She knew Greg wasn't just worried about the company's image, but also about his own position of power. Greg, I won't deny the photo is real, and I won't deny my feelings, whether for Lucas, my daughter, or the children here. But I will not apologize for smiling. Greg clenched his jaw, his voice taut. If you won't resign, the board will remove you themselves. This is your last option. That day, the media swarmed outside Solvita room. Reporters crowded in, cameras pointed at the narrow path where Camille stood in front of the center's sign, wearing a simple white shirt, no jewelry, no makeup. She spoke calmly, her voice strong and clear above the crowd. I know you want me to explain why I chose to stay with my child, why I built Solvita room, why I smile, why I care. But I think it's time we stopped measuring a mother by her achievements or her title. She paused, looking straight into the camera. I will not resign. I am stepping up, not as CEO, but as a mother. I am proud to have chosen to stay, to sit down and listen. I will not leave Solvita room, just as I will never leave Eva, or any child who needs a safe place to belong. The crowd fell silent. Only camera shutters clicked. Camille turned back toward the center, where Ava and Becca stood just inside the glass doors. She smiled, confidently walking past the crowd, leaving behind all the noise and judgment. That evening, Lucas and Camille sat on the rooftop, watching the city lights twinkle below. Lucas said softly, Do you realize you just set a new precedent? A mother saying, I'm not resigning, I'm stepping up. Camille smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. The world needs more mothers like that, doesn't it? Lucas squeezed her hand as they quietly looked toward the building with the Solvita room sign still glowing. It was no longer a place of scandal, but a home for stories of rebirth, beginning with the smile of a mother brave enough to live her truth. The official opening day of Solvita room arrived beneath a pale blue sky, gentle breezes fluttering through the wide-open windows. Outside, balloons and colorful ribbons stretched from the gate to the main hall. The air was festive, but instead of loudspeakers and long speeches, the space was filled with small sounds, laughter, whispers, the rustle of drawing paper. Camille, in a simple cream dress, wore only a paper flower pinned to her chest, one that Eva had made herself. She didn't stand at the podium, didn't hold a microphone, didn't prepare a speech. Instead, she chose to step back, blending into the crowd of parents and teachers, giving the entire stage to the children. Becca was the first to step up, shy but radiant, greeting everyone and inviting Eva to join her. Eva wore a light blue dress, her hair in 2 braids, clutching her drawing of a rainbow. Becca introduced briefly, Today, I'm not speaking for anyone else. These are Eva's words. Eva took the microphone, her eyes a little uncertain, but her voice clear, stronger than ever before. Solvita room is a place for anyone who's ever felt like a lost puzzle piece. Here, everyone gets to choose their own colors. If today you don't want to talk, just want to draw or sit quietly, that's okay. Because everyone deserves to be listened to, whether by color, by pictures, or just by silence. No one erupted into applause. There were just gentle, emotional nods and shining eyes filled with empathy. A shy little boy quietly walked up and handed Eva a small drawing, a blue circle connected to her rainbow. Eva took it, smiled at him, and stuck his drawing beside her rainbow on the big board. Camille stood among the crowd, watching each child, parent, and teacher with misty eyes. She saw Greg standing off to the side, his usual stern face now replaced by a look of quiet admiration. Lucas squeezed her hand from behind, his eyes glowing with pride. Eva turned to them both, her eyes shining. "Mommy," she called to Camille. "Daddy," she called Lucas, without the slightest hesitation. It wasn't a title given by duty or by traditional family. It was the voice of connection, of emotion, and trust. Lucas sniffled, trying to hide his feelings. Camille hugged her daughter, speechless. There was no grand leader's speech that day. Only laughter, soft singing, new pictures going up on the wall, and arms wrapping around each other in a flood of color. As the sun slipped behind the building, the last rays poured into Solvita room, lighting up a rainbow across the floor, like a promise that from now on, no one would ever be a lost puzzle piece again. 6 months after the grand opening, summer had arrived in the city. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and the sound of bird song, mingling with the golden sunlight that spilled across the New York sidewalks. The community around Solvita room had changed too. Curiosity had given way to trust and genuine friendliness. That Saturday morning, the community garden behind Solvita room reopened for the first time in years. The wooden fence was newly painted, flower beds carefully replanted, and a small corner filled with pots tended by Eva and Becca themselves. Colorful flags fluttered along the path. Wooden tables sat in the shade of ancient oaks. Children laughed, and parents chatted under the trees. Camille stepped out onto the porch, holding a cup of tea, taking in the vibrant garden scene. No longer the busy CEO with a packed schedule, she felt a new lightness in her heart, as if, after years of running and fighting fear, she was finally learning how to stay. Lucas sat on the steps with a box of watercolors and a few blank sheets. Becca arranged plastic cups for a rainbow bubbles game. Eva sat beside them, her hair loose, eyes thoughtful as she gazed at the paint box, choosing, for the very first time, a stick of yellow. Camille watched quietly, her heartbeat slowing. Ever since Eva had first said blue, that had always been her only color. But today, she reached for yellow, then painted a big sun in the corner of her paper, radiant and bright. Lucas smiled in encouragement. Becca added a few lavender clouds, green raindrops, and a sweeping rainbow. Eva turned to her mother, holding out the yellow crayon, and whispered, "Mom, will you draw with me?" Camille said nothing. She just sat beside her daughter, picked up an orange crayon, and drew another sunbeam next to Eva's. In that moment, she realized, silence was no longer the enemy, or something broken that needed fixing. It was a gentle space where love could find its own voice. By evening, the four of them, Camille, Lucas, Becca, and Eva, sat together on the old wooden bench beneath the oak tree. Eva placed the finished picture on her mother's lap. On the paper, 3 people stood together under a sky bursting with color. No one was left out. No one was a lost puzzle piece. In the corner, Eva had carefully written, "Home is when we all fit." Camille hugged Eva, feeling her daughter's small warmth pressed to her heart, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me to listen, not just with words, but with colors, with silence, and with all my heart." Lucas squeezed Becca's hand, his eyes shining with happiness. Outside, dusk spread across the garden, golden rays painting every corner, a gentle promise for a home that finally felt just right. And in that place, even as each person kept their own silences, they all knew. You don't have to be perfect. You only have to be present. You don't have to say much. You only have to draw your own home together. Healing, Camille realized, is not the absence of silence or fear. It is the moment we choose to stay, to listen, and to create together. Some homes are built with bricks and wood, others with laughter, color, and the courage to begin again. And perhaps, just perhaps, the truest homes are not places at all, but the feeling of finally fitting, side by side, in the story you dared to color together. If this story moved you, even a little, if it reminded you that love can be quiet and healing can come in every color, leave us a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, or simply share what home means to you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of kindness, courage, and second chances. And until the next journey, stay kind, stay human, and always listen for the colors in the silence. Thank you for being here and for helping us build a world where everyone belongs.